Hey, what's up guys? Thank you for tuning in to the first ride report on the brand new UNNO IKKI beside me, a TQ powered SL Enduro e-bike. Let's find out how it rides and learn all about it. Let's go. Yes, so this is the UNNO IKKI, the brand's first lightweight e-mountain bike, bike that they've chosen to power with TQ's HPR 50 motor system, offering 50 Newton meters of torque and a really natural kind of feeling assistance with a really super lightweight package with the motor coming in at just 1.8 kilograms. This is powered by an internal 360 watt-hour battery and can also be boosted further by an optional range extender, which UNNO's given plenty of room for inside the frame, although you do have to go for the range extender or a water bottle. You can't have both in this case. The IKKI is their latest in their range and follows their sort of same design language, sort of taking the pretty out there sort of frame design and packaging it around the TQ system to give a bike that they're trying to be as sort of sleek and as little e-bike as possible, just looking like a regular bike, but of course giving you that little bit of extra assistance to get you up the hills. Up front, you've got a 170mm 38mm stanchion fork, the Fox 38, and in the rear you've got 160mm travel with a 29er wheel up front and a 27.5 inch in the back with what you call a mullet setup to give the sort of balance and handling that UNNO wanted. The UNNO uses their take on a sort of VPP style dual link system, so you've got a very interesting kinematics, plenty of pedal support on all the bikes in their range, but most importantly, or most kind of stand out as a feature, is the progression that this system offers. So you've got up to, if not over, 50% progression throughout the leverage ratio, meaning you run ideally between 30 to 40, but certainly 35 or 40% sag, which changes the geometry from the static figures quite a lot when you're actually on the trail, but certainly has been proven to perform pretty well so far in our initial tests. This suspension system does certainly help to give the bike its unique look, super low slung with that frame design with the big seat mast there, and then everything kind of contained, nice and low center of gravity. It does make accessing the shock a little bit tricky, but you know, given the amount of times that you're often making adjustments to the bike, the slight extra complexity isn't a total deal breaker in my eyes. Just something that you kind of struggle with a little bit. It's not kind of impossible to get to the shock to tune it, but yeah, certainly a little bit of extra struggle to get a hose attached for the shock pump or to get into the damping adjustments on the shock in the initial setup period. As with the rest of the UNNO range, the IKKI is manufactured from carbon out in Asia, but in a very reputable factory that they've been very impressed by the quality overall, and it's certainly safe to say that the quality seems right up there. It's got a really nice paint finish on there as well, and is really well protected by the custom ride wrap kit on there. UNNO's trying to bring a big level of integration to their bikes, so up on the front you've got an integrated bar and stem combo from their in-house component range, and it's a really nice and clean kind of carbon fiber unit. They do then route the cables through the headset, which obviously won't be to everyone's liking, but it's a level of integration that they wanted to bring where they were, you know, slightly less concerned about the home mechanic or for the person who has to spend a little bit of extra time to maintain their bikes, but they'd rather give that ultra clean look, the super quiet handling of the bike without the cable rattle in the front. And you know, speaking with mechanics, there's definitely a bit of a divide there whether it is a system that is really going to cause issue, but it certainly looks super clean. So if out and out performance is your priority, then it's nice to have. Other integrations include a integrated seat clamp up on that seat tube mast, as well as a nice integrated chain guide and plenty of frame protection on there just to keep it running nice and quietly. At present, UNNO is going to offer the IKKI in a choice of two different build levels. There's either the race option we've got here, which comes in at roughly the $10,000 euro pound mark, plus VAT and imports and whatever to do in your country. And then there's also the absolute top of the line factory spec, which comes in at around about the 12,000 to 13,000 mark, depending on where you are in the world. So certainly these are not cheap bikes, but let's dive into the componentry that you get on this bike for that money. Up on the cockpit, you've got that integrated bar and stem carbon fiber combo, super clean and pretty damn lightweight as well. You've got a set of Formula Cura 4 brakes with a 220mm rotor up front and a 200mm in the back. And these have been something that I've not used very much in the past, but I've been quite impressed by this little test that we've had. Fox factory suspension on both ends, the same for the race and the factory build. But what really differentiates the two is the dropper. So on the factory build, you get Axis reverb, whereas here you get a one-up dropper. You get a DT Swiss alloy wheel set on this, you know, the nice HX 1700 wheels, which are pretty damn bomb-proof and pretty reasonable weight as well. Whereas you go up to a Crank Brothers carbon synthesis wheel set on the factory level. And really that is about it. Certainly it's safe to say, the factory level also has XX axis drivetrain, the T-Type, whereas this has GX axis T-Type. So, you know, there's 2,000 to 3,000 between the two bikes, and it's safe to say that if you buy this, you're unlikely to be disappointed in the spec. So UNNO offers a size range from S1 to S3. They're kind of reach-based sizes, which roughly work out to a small, medium large, and an extra large. This is the S2 that I've been testing, the kind of medium large in the size range, and comes with a 470mm reach with a 640mm stack. The rear end is consistent across the size range at 450mm, so fairly long, to give plenty of front wheel weight in for steeper climbs. You've got a 64-degree head tube angle and a 77-degree seat tube angle. And yeah, overall, the numbers are fairly purposeful, but they don't sound like they're particularly aggressive on paper. However, when you factor in the increased amount of sag that you're typically going to run on this bike, then it becomes a little bit more aggressive once the bike's kind of hunkered down. You know, drop the bottom bracket, slacken out the head tube angle, and obtain an overall more aggressive sort of riding position and stance and stable ride. Now that we've learned all the details on the IKKI, let's talk about how it's been riding this first couple of days that we've had on the bike. So far we've managed 2 sort of half-day rides on board the IKKI to get a kind of feel for it on trails that I'm certainly not familiar with in Valromanes, near to their Spanish headquarters in Barcelona. But it's certainly been plenty of time to kind of get a really aggressive riding done, play about with the setup a little bit, and generally get a pretty good feel for what this thing would be like in other terrain. But yeah, certainly I'd like to take it back to my home trails in Scotland for a longer term review to really play about with the setup, get a feel for it on a slightly wider variety of terrain that's more familiar to me, and yeah, just generally get more time on it for a really final long-term review. But for now, we'll talk about the first impressions. Hopping on this thing in the car park for the first day and trying to get it set up, you do quite quickly realize that, you know, the shock is super hidden in there, pretty difficult to get in to wind on the shock pump, quite difficult to get access to the damping adjustments, and then also quite difficult to measure sag accurately. It is possible, you can kind of get a tape measure in up the back and yeah, do a reasonably accurate job of getting that sag set up properly, but it's certainly not the most user-friendly system for that respect. However, once you're kind of done that process initially, yeah, it all starts to make sense. I had the help of the UNNO team to get it set up to the right kind of sag, so they're recommending 35% as a good baseline setup. So that was 23mm of shock sag on the shaft for anyone interested. But yeah, once I kind of got to that level, you do certainly feel like it. You hop on the bike, it's super plush off the top. You know, you get almost negative travel just lifting the back of the seat when the bike just you know, sags under its own weight when you put it down onto the ground. So it's clear to see the progression on that leverage ratio means that there's very little breakaway force required to overcome the friction and the shock. which is really nice and should, technically yield a slightly smoother, more compliant rear end when you're first touching back down to ground. So 35%, you sit on the bike initially, you do feel like you are sagged into it more than you might be accustomed to on other bikes, but the geometry has all sort of been designed to work with that. There's plenty of anti-squat in there, so when you start pedaling, you don't feel like you're just in a wheelie or really choppered out on the bike. It kind of sits in a fairly comfortable position and yeah, makes for a fairly pleasant pedaling machine. It's definitely a comfortable bike to pedal. Plenty of support in the suspension. Nice steep seat tube angle. Makes short work of these fairly steep climbs in Val Romanes. The TQ system isn't my favourite. It certainly offers a nice quiet ride, a very responsive, intuitive sort of feel under the pedals, but for me, it doesn't, for an e-bike, it doesn't offer quite enough grunt. TQ motor as usual doesn't feel like the strongest. Definitely an addition to your home power rather than providing power without you giving anything, but still does the job and makes life a lot more pleasant, as if well, than if you had no motor at all. I'd much rather have one of the systems that uses a slightly higher torque system, the new Bosch SX, the Fazua system, or the detuned Shimano motor of the Orbea Rise, all give you that little bit more grunt that's very notable to really help take the sting off. You finish a ride on the TQ system and because you do have a slight balancing act to do with the battery life and the power mode that you're using, yeah, you certainly feel like you've been on a ride when you finish a ride on the TQ system, but it's no bad thing. It's certainly a system that many people will enjoy, and its integration, the clean looks, you look at this bike, it is very hard to tell that it's an e-bike at all, is really appreciated, and especially for people who are maybe inclined to ride in areas where e-bikes aren't necessarily allowed. It's a system that I think a lot of people will be quite happy with. When you get onto the descents, the IKKI really comes alive. UNNO's Cesar Rojo, the man behind the brain power behind UNNO and his design agency Cero. He is a former World Cup downhill racer, and it kind of shows in the design of the IKKI. And really, when it came alive was when I was at my, riding at my edge, pushing the bike as hard as I could. It offers plenty of support, a really stout and solid feeling, and makes for a really, really fun time to push hard and really attack the trail. On slightly less aggressive bits of trail though, the geometry isn't crazy, and I found that it was still fairly nice and maneuverable. It's not a super poppy and playful bike because you've got all that negative travel, because the rear end is quite long. Yeah, it doesn't lead itself to being a bike that I was able to really jib about on the trail quite so much, but when you get a bit of speed up, it's a bike that you can take off of a big kicker, send it to flat, and all that progression means that you don't blow into the bottom of the travel. Instead, you're given plenty of support there to take that impact and to leave you pretty happy, just absolutely charging it, sending it as if a bike that's got more travel than the 160, 170 that this bike does. It is almost reaching downhill bike terrain. And I know that UNNO is saying that Angel Suarez, one of our riders, had taken their enduro bike, stuck a Triple Crown on it, and only gone 2 seconds slower than on a Common Cell Supreme down a downhill track. So it's safe to say that UNNO knows how to design a bike that's designed to go pretty fast and aggressive down the hill. What that does mean though is that there were a few times where I would ride in trail that I didn't know, and maybe I had backed off a little bit, and then the slightly less comfortable nature of the bike started to show through a little bit. There were a couple of times where I felt the rear wheel maybe hang up a little bit, or just transmit a little bit more of a shock through the pedals than I was expecting, and also just the overall package is quite stiff. Even with the set of alloy wheels, it's certainly a bike that leads itself to being pushed hard and resisting, kind of twisting up in off-camber compressions, which is really nice for me, especially as a heavy rider. But I reckon if you took this bike as a lighter rider, stuck a set of carbon wheels on it, it could be a little bit unforgiving. But yeah, it's certainly a a package that is very inspiring to ride aggressively, and a bike that I've had a lot of fun on riding so far. It's also been quite quiet, which has been quite nice. Not too much in the way of chain slap or cable rattle or anything in there, just an overall very dialed feeling, and a package that just looks absolutely magnificent in the flesh. A really head-turning bike, and one that kind of inspires you to go out and attack the trail and have a good time. So I've thoroughly enjoyed my first time on board an UNNO, and definitely looking forward to getting more time on one in the future, hopefully. I hope you guys have enjoyed checking out this first ride review on the new UNNO IKKI SL Enduro eMTB. If you have, then give us a like, leave us a comment, let us know your thoughts on this new machine, and subscribe to the channel to see more awesome content on awesome bikes like the UNNO IKKI. Thanks for watching, catch you out on the trails.